Good morning, everyone. Fourth Way Foundation, Project VENDA, S.A.F.E ഫോറത്തിന്റെ മൂന്നാമത്തെ സീരീസിലാണ് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേറ്റ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. S.A.F.E ഫോറം 2020യുടെ രണ്ടാമത്തെ ദിവസത്തിലേക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും സ്വാഗതം. ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാം യൂട്യൂബിലൂടെ തത്സമയം സംപ്രേഷണം ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇതിന്റെ ലിങ്ക് നമ്മുടെ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ അവൈലബിൾ ആണ്. നിങ്ങളുടെ കൂട്ടുകാർക്കോ ഈ വിഷയത്തിൽ താല്പര്യമുള്ള വ്യക്തികൾക്കോ ഈ ലിങ്ക് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അയച്ചു കൊടുക്കാവുന്നതാണ്. എന്റെ പേര് ടോണിഷ്, എന്റെ കൂടെ ഹോസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ആലിയ.
Althea, you're on mute. Can you unmute your mic?
Yeah. Thank you, Tonish. So it's such a pleasure to see that so many students, professionals, people from various parts of the world and also distinguished guests are here with us today. Once again, I welcome all of you who have joined us. Now, this is a gentle reminder to all the participants that this forum is being live streamed at YouTube, and you can encourage your friends to join us live. The participants can use the chat box for questions and queries during the question and answer session. We also recommend that you use side-by-side view for the best visibility. Well, yesterday was the first day of our forum and we had a very informative session. Isn't it, Tonish?
Yes. ഇന്നലെ നമ്മൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് സെഷനിൽ ഡോക്ടർ ദാരുഷയുടേതായിരുന്നു. അഡിക്ഷൻ ആൻഡ് ഹാബിറ്റ് ഫോർമേഷൻ എമംഗ് ടീനേജേഴ്സ് ആൻഡ് യങ് അഡൽട്സ് എന്ന വിഷയത്തെ പറ്റിയാണ് ദാരുഷ സംസാരിച്ചത്. അതായത് എങ്ങനെയാണ് കൗമാരക്കാരും യുവജനങ്ങളും ലഹരിയിൽ അകപ്പെട്ടു പോകുന്നത്, എങ്ങനെ ലഹരി ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ശീലത്തിലേക്ക് അവർ എത്തിച്ചേരുന്നു എന്നുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളെ പറ്റിയൊക്കെയാണ് സംസാരിച്ചത്. അതിനുശേഷം മിസ്റ്റർ ഷെയ്ൻ ഫ്രം ഡൽഗാനോ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഡ്രഗ് നിയമവിധേയമാക്കലും അതിനെ റിലേറ്റ് ചെയ്തുള്ള വാദങ്ങളെയും പറ്റിയാണ് സംസാരിച്ചത്. സോ ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ പോകുന്ന വിഷയം റോൾ ഓഫ് ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റീവ് പെർസ്യൂട്ട്സ് എമംഗ് യൂത്ത് ഇൻ ക്രിയേറ്റിംഗ് എ സബ്സ്റ്റൻസ് അബ്യൂസ് ഫ്രീ എൻവയോൺമെന്റ് എന്നതാണ്. അതായത് ലഹരി വസ്തുക്കളുടെ ദുരുപയോഗരഹിത പരിസ്ഥിതി സൃഷ്ടിക്കുന്നതിൽ യുവാക്കൾക്കിടയിൽ സ്പോർട്സ്, മ്യൂസിക്, ആർട്സ് പോലുള്ള ബദൽ മാർഗങ്ങൾക്കുള്ള പ്രാധാന്യത്തെ പറ്റിയാണ് ഡിസ്കഷൻസ് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് പോകുന്നത്. I hope Diana Joseph can give us more information on the same.
Yes, Tonish. To give us all a brief on today's topic and to set the tone for the session, I invite Diana Joseph. I know many of you have heard a magnificent introduction to S.A.F.E Forum 2020 from Diana Joseph, co-founder and director of Fourth Way Foundation, a human rights advocate and an equality activist. She has been instrumental in initiating various community-based programs that create a substance abuse-free environment for children, provide equal opportunities for people with disabilities, and inclusive education. For setting the context on today's topic, role of alternative pursuits among youth and creating S.A.F.E, I invite Ms. Diana Joseph. Over to you, Diana.
Diana, you are muted.
Thank you, dear team. Like I mentioned yesterday, it is a great kudos to the entire team at Project VENDA for hosting this amidst the COVID and the Corona crisis. And as much as we have know the situations that's a hindrance to all our regular work, I think this team has really pulled off a wonderful conference despite all the problems we face. And I just want to thank you all again before we start for the day. And also all of them who have logged in today to join us. We know the situations we're all in, the issues around our connectivities and our normal lifestyles, and all of you all are keenly watching and following this because it matters, and we thank you all for joining in. To set the context for today, I really want to focus on two things. One is the work that VENDA does amongst youngsters and our emphasis on alternative pursuits or healthy choices for youngsters. That's something that I want to talk about today. And also the convention, the UNCRC, United Nations Child Rights Convention, Article 33, which clearly speaks about the right for a child to be kept away from any environment that's not healthy due to drugs or substance abuse. These two things will sort of help us understand why we're focusing on what we're doing this day with wonderful panelists who have joined in today. And I think it's going to be exciting. Project VENDA primarily works in the area of prevention. We work with youngsters, school managements, government policymakers to enable a safe environment, that is a substance-free, abuse-free environment for kids and youngsters. And when we say kids or youngsters or children, according to the UN Convention, anybody who is under the age of 18 is considered a child by law or by the rule of the land. The other thing is that physiologically and developmental wise, anybody under the age of 22 is still considered a growing adult, a young adult, because of many reasons: our brain development, our body development, our ability to make choices, all of that. We say till 22, we're still in that phase of growth. So technically, we are working with young adults and teenagers till the age bracket of 22. And what we see as a lifestyle today is a lot of emphasis on academics, schooling, pursuit of a career immediately after work. All of that sort of cramping our children and our lifestyles. And what we advocate at Project VENDA is also the ability for children, or the space or environment for children to be pursuing healthy choices in terms of sports, music, arts, theater, and things like that. And we've practically proved it in the communities that we work. High-risk areas where children between the ages of 12 and 22 do not miss a lifestyle of being exposed to drugs. So we have practically run programs where we have seen children, it helps children keep away from harmful choices and also make healthy choices in the process. Some of those examples I think my team will share today. And last of all, I want to leave with one message. People say that we need to protect children and speak to them about the healthy lifestyles, but how do you do it? I think the little formula that we have at VENDA, the Project VENDA, is that we need to protect our children, but the best protection to give them is to be honest with them. Be honest about all of these issues that's happening around us, expose them to the realities and the truth of the good and the bad sides of it, and be objective about the information that you give them, like really show them the sides of the realities when they make choices. And above all of this is to also enable them with services and environments which they need, or which will help them to make these right choices. It is the jurisdiction or the legislative and administrative part of the government that has to do a bit of that to ensure the children are safe, while I think the ownership lies on us, the community, the youth, all of us, to enable the educational and the social spaces for them to grow in healthy environments. So with this, I kickstart the day. I invite the wonderful panelists who've been working precisely in this area. Abhijit, who strives to work with children to help them pursue sport as an alternative life choice. We look at Stephen Davisi, who is the star of the day with all these music choices he's made, a good friend of VENDA, and somebody who has a serious, beautiful lifestyle which youngsters can look at. We look at Shruti, who is also in her capacity looking at sports as an equal, participative process in the life choices of adults and young adults. And Regina, who works with the international organizations like the World Federation Against Drugs and the UN Women, all of those spaces to ensure children have a right to safe environment. So while inviting all of these wonderful panelists today, I wish today and the participants and the entire team at VENDA great success. All the best to you all.
Thank you, Diana Joseph. Innate topic ne patti nalloru introduction tannadine. Diana Josephinte introductionilode namukku innate panel discussionilekku kadakam. നമ്മുടെ ഇന്ന് പാനൽ ഡിസ്കഷൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ളത് അവരുടേതായ മേഖലകളിൽ വ്യക്തിമുദ്ര പതിപ്പിച്ച വളരെ പ്രശസ്തരായിട്ടുള്ള വ്യക്തികളാണ്. അവരെ സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യാനും ഈ ഒരു ഡിസ്കഷൻ മോഡറേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നതും മിസ്റ്റർ രോഹിത് ചെല്ലാട്ടാണ്. Mr. Rohit is a catalyst of VENDA. He is the chief designer of our alternative pursuit model at Project VENDA. Through his guidance, a fabulous team of Project VENDA catalysts leaves no stones unturned to make this model work, and through its implementation, create safe for our teens and young adults. Therefore, I invite Rohit, who in every way is the best person to moderate our panel of experts, who will all share their insights on the role of alternative pursuits, creating safe. Over to you, Rohit.
Thank you, Tonish. Thank you, Althea. So before we begin, I would like to introduce you someone, Tijo Sebastian. Tijo Sebastian ആണ് അവരുടെ ഞങ്ങളുടെ മെയിൻ ഫുട്ബോൾ കോച്ചും ഈ പ്രോജക്റ്റിന്റെ ഒരു മെയിൻ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ് ഘടകവും. സോ Tijo.
Hello.
Yes, Tijo.
Hi, എൻ്റെ പേര് ടിജോയ്. ഞാനിപ്പോൾ ഫോർത്ത് ഫൗണ്ടേഷനിലെ പ്രോജക്റ്റ് വേണ്ടയുടെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് 2 വർഷമായി. ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റീവ് പർസ്യൂട്ടിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗമായിട്ട് ഫുട്ബോൾ ട്രെയിനിങ് ആണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഫുട്ബോൾ ട്രെയിനിങ് ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഞാൻ ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് അവരുടെ അടുത്ത് കൂടുതലായിട്ട് ഇടപെടാനും നല്ലൊരു ചേട്ടനെ പോലെ അവരുടെ അടുത്ത് എന്താ പറയുക നല്ലൊരു കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുത്ത്. ഇപ്പൊ ആയിരിക്കും തന്നെ ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ സമയമില്ല കുട്ടികളുടെ അടുത്ത് ചിലവഴിക്കാൻ തന്നെ. നമ്മളുടെ സ്വന്തം അനിയന്മാരായാലും സ്വന്തം അനിയത്തിമാരായാലും അവരുടെ അടുത്ത് ചിലവഴിക്കാനുള്ള ഒരു സാഹചര്യങ്ങളോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സമയങ്ങളോ നമുക്ക് കണ്ടെത്താറില്ല. അപ്പൊ എനിക്ക് കൂടുതൽ തോന്നിയിട്ടുണ്ട് അവരുടെ അടുത്ത് കൂടുതൽ ഫുട്ബോളിലെ ഓരോ കാര്യങ്ങൾ പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുക്കുന്നതിനെക്കാട്ടും കൂടുതൽ അവരുടെ ലൈഫിലെ അവര് അഭിമുഖീകരിക്കുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുത്ത് അവരെ പല രീതിയിലും നമ്മളെ ഡ്രഗിൽ നിന്ന് മാറ്റി നിർത്താനുള്ള ഒരു കാര്യമാണ് കൂടുതലും ഞാൻ ചെയ്തേക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ ഒരു ഫുട്ബോൾ അതിന്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗമായി എന്നുള്ളൊരു ഇത് തന്നെയാണ് ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാല് സത്യത്തില്. അപ്പൊ ഒത്തിരി കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഞാൻ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു ഫുട്ബോളിലൂടെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റീവ് പർസ്യൂട്ടിലൂടെ പല രീതിയിൽ അവരുടെ അടുത്ത് ഇടപെടുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നത് അവർ കേൾക്കുന്നത് നല്ലൊരു ചേട്ടനെ പോലെ അവർ അത് കേട്ട് മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നു. അതൊക്കെ ഒത്തിരി എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഒത്തിരി പിള്ളേര് അങ്ങനത്തെ ഒരു കൂട്ടുകെട്ടിനൊക്കെ മാറി ഇപ്പോ നമ്മളെ ഒരു വേണ്ടയുടെ പ്രോജക്റ്റ് വേണ്ടയുടെ ഭാഗമായിട്ടുള്ള ഈ ഒരു ട്രെയിനിങ്ങിലും കാര്യങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ ഒത്തിരി പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നതൊക്കെ ശരിക്കും അത് എൻജോയ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ എന്നെ കേൾക്കുന്ന നിങ്ങളുടെ എനിക്ക് അറിയാനുള്ള ഒരു സംഭവം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാല് നിങ്ങളും അത് ട്രൈ ചെയ്യുക. ശരിക്കും നിങ്ങളുടെ അനിയത്തിമാരോ അനിയന്മാരുടെ അടുത്തൊക്കെ കൂടുതൽ സമയം സ്പെൻഡ് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ ട്രൈ ചെയ്യുക.
Yeah, thank you, Tijo. So what he was trying to say is, with all the things he does, the one thing he focuses on or put his effort on is to be with them, to just accompany them. Definitely there is football, teaching football and everything, but he believes if he is with them, if he is accompanying them, then there is less chance for them to go on the wrong path or to make mistakes. And one of the things always inspired me about him is his belief in goodness among these children. Like the psychologist John says, like humans are good by nature, by birth they are good, but with the complexes of this modern society and development, they ultimately become complex people. This is something we believe in a lot. With this alternative pursuit program, we always try to give the kids the right thing to do, a safe environment where they can come, play, dancing, do whatever they want to do, be themselves, but in a safe, protected environment. And we believe if they have enough opportunity, they will not make the wrong choices. If they have enough opportunity to make the right choices, they will be always on the right side. That's what we believe. And the idea of alternative pursuit is very well communicated with the coach from Harvey Milkman. He says, why not orchestrate a social movement around natural highs, around people getting high on their own brain chemistry? Because it seems obvious to me that people want to change their consciousness without deleterious effects of drugs. So this is a basic idea of alternative pursuit, and Harvey Milkman is one of the key figures and one of the earliest advocates of this whole idea of being using alternative pursuits for combating drugs. And he is one of the influential personality who started the project in Iceland. When they began the project, Iceland was one of the most affected countries in Europe with drug abuse and alcoholism among teenagers and young adults. And with the program, with the 10 years, they become after 10 years they become the least or the top country without any effects of drug abuse or alcoholism among youth and young adults. They spend a lot of money on engaging youth in the evening hours, evening time. They build a lot of grounds. They find methods to engage where the kids will be always in a watch. Uh, but to see it from our context, from a Kerala context or from an Indian context, it's not always easy to find sports infrastructures or the support we need to execute a program like this. So with this panel, what we are trying to find or what we are trying to look at it is how we can do something like that Icelandic model in our context with the help of youth and students who are the one of the strength of our country and our society. So with this, I would like to start with one of our panelists who has vast experience in human resource management and as recognized as one of the top 40 HR influencers in our country by Society of Human Resource Management. I welcome Shruti Popaya. She's from Bangalore. She has represented state and university in basketball and tennis, and she has recognized as game changer in 2012 by the workforce management. She is currently working with Bridgewave as a head of client engagement and communications, and she has been previously worked with Infosys as their head of internal communication. We welcome Shruti. So
Thank you.
Shruti, thank you. So Shruti, to begin with, I would like to ask you, actually, what's your take on people spending time on other habits or skills apart from their own job or career or whatever? And does this actually help as a person to increase the productivity or increase the possibility of being a better person?
Thank you, Rohit. I'm just going to just do a quick audio check. I was missing you for some lines, so if it's fine, yeah, I can see Diana saying, yeah. Okay, great. So firstly, thank you so much. It's just an honor to be here amongst the panelists here today, and just what VENDA, Project VENDA is, I've been pretty fascinated from the time I've, got to know what you are really trying to do for, young adults, teenagers, children. So congratulations, fantastic work. Jumping straight into what, Rohit asked me about. So Rohit, I would like to, talk about this in two aspects. One, as an individual and what I've probably done when it came to alternative pursuits. And two, from a hiring perspective, and when I've looked at young adults, and I've been hiring in organizations for the past 14, 15 years, angle which I always ask children about before actually hiring some of them into these jobs. And I know a lot of people do that. So let me first start with from an individual perspective. So from an individual perspective, one of the things that I want to say is that in the school that I went to, or the community that I grew up in, or what my parents, for example, uh, asked us to always focus on was just picking up skills that probably we may not use to become the world's best tennis player or the world's best basketball player, or if you really looked at it, I mean, I'd call myself as jack of all, master of none. But I've done different things all across all the years of my life, whether it was singing, whether it was dancing, and at that time you never knew why you went to why you went into so many of these communities, why you took part, why you participated. But over a period of time, I realized that alternative pursuits gave me a number of things which at that point in time, like you said, if there is opportunity, then, and if it is in front of you, I would say just jump into it, because of the number of things that it kind of gives you over the years. You kind of look at it only later. But let's start with the first thing. What does it give you? Just gives you a completely different group of friends. It's different from the school you study in, from the class you sit in. It's completely different. These are different types of people who you are getting together with. So you form deep friendships, deep bonds. You do things which are very, different. So that is one. Two is, your need, or your need for curiosity. Every time you jump into doing something new, learning something new, you're building your sense of curiosity, and building a sense of curiosity for life as a skill is, I would say, probably the number one skill somebody can really, latch on to. Because then you're constantly learning, you're constantly, wanting to know about somebody else. There is a reason for conversation wherever you go, whenever you go, and you are somebody who can start conversations easily, because there is something for you to talk about, something for you to even ask somebody else to try or learn. So, these are, and so social skills build, every time you're on an alternative pursuit. So to answer your question, Rohit, I would say that when you start off, look at it as something that you just want to jump into, because there are many subtle reasons that are around you which you may not see. So you don't have to get into it because it has to become your main career. It has to be your main reason to become the best at it. But just get into it for the love of it. Get into it for the fun of it. Get into it because you're just going to have a good time. So I think I would say that's the easiest way for some of these kids to just start something, just volunteer, just jump into it. I would say just jump into it, and then let that experience, help you with whether you want to stay in it, look at something else, or just hop, be a butterfly, but keep doing different things, keep learning, is what I would say to sort of answer your question.
Thank you, Shruti. It's very clear that we also have to do things which we love and which we like, and just like blindly start doing things. It's very inspiring. And next person in our panel might not need any introduction. We all know Stephen Devasi, the Prince of Piano. We are glad to welcome Stephen Devasi. Stephen Devasi is an Indian pianist, performer, and a composer hailing from Kerala. He started his career as a musician at a very early stage, accompanying the most famous musicians around. And he has created a very distinct identity and style which is transcends and all genres and amazes audience across the globe. We welcome Stephen.
Hi.
Hi. സ്റ്റീഫൻ, ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ചോദിക്കാനുള്ള ഒരു ചോദ്യം, പലയിടത്തും വായിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്, പലയിടത്തും കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഈവൻ സ്റ്റീഫന്റെ അത്രയും കഴിവുള്ള ഒരു വ്യക്തി പോലും ദിവസവും മണിക്കൂറുകളോളം പ്രാക്ടീസിന് വേണ്ടി സ്പെൻഡ് ചെയ്യും എന്നുള്ളത്. അത് എനിക്ക് ചോദിക്കാനുള്ള ചോദ്യം, അങ്ങനെ ദിവസവും പ്രാക്ടീസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് മ്യൂസിക്കിനെ മാത്രമാണോ ഹെൽപ്പ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, അതോ സ്റ്റീഫൻ എന്ന വ്യക്തിയെയും അത് ഒരുപാട് സഹായിക്കാറുണ്ടോ?
Practice ചെയ്യാന്ന് പറയാൻ തന്നെ discipline. It's called discipline. Chitta എന്ന് പറയും. When we practice, we keep a discipline. So I came from a very disciplined, trained, like a season of pianists and teachers. I came from, my gurus are very disciplined and we have to follow the discipline. So I came from that. So ഇത് രണ്ടെണ്ണം കൂടെ മിക്സ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ automatically when we start our practice, we fell into the complete discipline of what our gurus or teachers say. So first of all, we respect gurus and keep our parents as the best in the world. So once we follow that, everything comes fall in place. That's what I believe.
Thank you. സ്റ്റീഫൻ, മറ്റൊരു ചോദ്യം, പലപ്പോഴും കാണുന്ന ഒരു കോമൺ ഇതാണ്, പലരും സ്ട്രെസ് ആകുമ്പോഴും പലർക്കും ടെൻഷൻ വരുമ്പോഴും അവര് കാം ഡൗൺ ചെയ്യാൻ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത് മ്യൂസിക് ആണ്. പക്ഷേ ആസ് എ കമ്പോസർ എന്ന രീതിയിൽ സ്റ്റീഫൻ സെയിം രീതിയിൽ തന്നെയാണോ മ്യൂസിക്കിനെ കാണുന്നത്? സ്റ്റീഫനെ പലപ്പോഴും പലരും ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യുന്നത് ദ ഹാപ്പിയസ്റ്റ് പേഴ്സൺ ഓൺ ദ സ്റ്റേജ്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഏറ്റവും ജോയ്ഫുൾ പേഴ്സണാലിറ്റി ആയിട്ടാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ മ്യൂസിക് തന്നെയാണോ സ്റ്റീഫന്റെ സീക്രട്ട് ഓഫ് ഹാപ്പിനെസ്?
Yeah, ഹാപ്പിനെസ്സും മാത്രല്ലല്ലോ, നമുക്ക് എല്ലാം ദൈവം തരും. നമുക്ക് വിഷമം തരും, പ്രഷറും തരും. അത് അങ്ങനത്തെ ഒരു, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ ദൈവതുല്യ ആവണം. അത്ര ദാറ്റ്സ് വെരി ടഫ്. We will have happiness, we will have sad, we will have pressure.
Definitely.
See, being a musician also, I go under pressure doing music.
Yes.
So you can't say that every musician will be the happiest people. A lot of people are frustrated under pressure. Now the pandemic situation is going very bad. Everyone is stuck. So a lot of my colleagues and friends go into trouble. So it's not that every musicians are very happy. No. We release our good energy and good vibes to people around, and they to make them happy. So in every trade there is, you can send a frequency of positivity or negativity. So what I believe is music is very much connected to God. It's a gift of God, and it is a tool of God to make people peace and to spread peace and to spread happiness. So music is one of the tool. So there are a lot of artists, like I saw a lot of amazing people talking about life and their idea about life. So it is that they have to spread the peace and happiness, and they have taken their talent and career as a weapon to spread peace and happiness.
Thank you, Stephen. Very important, as you said, it's not just about us, it's also about making other people happy and using your skill for the benefit of others. Thank you, Stephen. And next question is so the one of the panelists in our
Rohit, are you there?
Hello, Rohit.
I think Rohit is broken. Maybe I'll just jump in before Rohit catches it. Stephen, are you there? Stephen, how do you understand, Stephen?
I'll keep it on. Thank you.
One question before Rohit maybe logs in. I don't know whether it is possible live, but will you be able to play a minute for the audience? Zoom il engane varu ennu ariyilla. Will it be?
My sound card is not connected, and no one asked. There was not a plan, but sure, I'll play. And I'm very happy to be here with these amazing people. CC Chatton I know from very young age, and the whole team, VENDA, and a lot of amazing people, inspiring people. So thank you so much for this. I take this as an opportunity to. Whatever I do just for the glory of God. So I'll play something.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much, Tifa. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Tifa, before you go, to all the youngsters, you have any message to tell, any last words? I know you have another recording, another meeting
Yes.
after this.
Thank you for
എന്തെങ്കിലും പറയാനുണ്ടോ? For all the youngsters.
To all the youngsters, see, I am from a very, I didn't never know that I'm going to be a musician. So it is all about a call that God would have. So if you have a call from above to do something, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. You will be one of the person that going to inspire the whole world. No matter you are poor, you are rich, you are powerful, you are weak. If God have that call, God will surely bring you up in that position. And there is no, nowadays there are a lot of things to be getting distracted. There are a lot of things, mobile phone, internet, there are a lot of things. So use everything for positive. Don't get much distracted because you have all possibility. It's not like old time. You have everything in your palm. If you have a cell phone, you have the whole world. So there is a lot of possibility to get distracted, to do good and bad. So try to do good, try to take everything as positive. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Tifa. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. God bless
Thank
you.
you, Stephen. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Rohit,
Yes,
you're back.
I'm back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So I was
Okay.
introducing Abhijit. Abhijit is the co-founder of Slum Soccer, and the Slum Soccer is one of the largest NGOs in India with its reach and network. And they work among slums and underprivileged kids. And Slum Soccer is the NGO which officially represent India in Homeless World Cup. Homeless World Cup is a tournament for underprivileged kids, and they organize tournaments every year in different countries. And one other interesting fact is Amitabh Bachchan will be playing Vijay Base, the founder of Slum Soccer, in the movie, which talks about the story of how they began the whole NGO and whole movement. So coming to you, Abhijit, my question is, how Stephen was saying, can also sports be a tool where which can help kids the holistic growth, even for the kids who doesn't have access to a lot of things, lot of grounds or a lot of schools or a lot of facilities? Can sports actually be a tool which help them grow holistically?
Thanks, Rohit, for the wonderful wisdom. And I'm still recovering from Stephen's performance. It was amazing. Thank you for putting me on such a wonderful panel. I feel very proud to be here speaking to youth, which is again the focus of everything that we do. As an organization, we have always believed that the mind and the body are very strongly connected. And sometimes to kickstart our mind, we may have to get physically active. To get physically active, sports seems to be one of the easiest way to do that. See, ever since we grow up, we are always playing. Play becomes a very important part of how we interact with the real world, how we make sense of situations around us. But as we grow, we sort of forget that act of playing. And somehow we, and especially in India, we've seen it a lot, that as you grow, your career takes, first your studies takes your focus, and you're sidelining education. Then after you're done with your education, you are focused on your career. Somehow in all of this, I think we forget to take care of ourselves. And by that, I mean we stop being physically active. The things that brings us together, sports, that becomes a luxury of sorts. Now we have used the power of sports to build youth across regions. what we have found out is that, yes, sports is one of the most powerful tool to be used to bring youth together. There's no doubt about that in our minds. And I say sports and not just football, although in Kerala's context, I would say football and it is as equivalent to it. But I know that there are several other wonderful sports persons who have come out of Kerala. So I'll speak more in terms of sports. When you're playing, especially team sports, it's not just the act of winning or losing. It's the connection that you develop during your playtime. I think Shruti mentioned the very fact that when you're out, when you're doing stuff together, you build those connections. When you especially are invited to play to some other place, even if it is just half an hour of drive to go somewhere, and that travel itself is sort of it's a team building act. It's a connectivity. You make new friends. And that's one of the best things that happens during the field. I believe that when you sweat together, meaning you play, you get exhausted, and that act of being physically exhausted together, that sort of builds more up. See, just the sports also is not the only answer. Sports is a tool, and like music can be a very powerful tool, sports also can in itself be a very powerful tool to redirect your attention. We do work with a lot of young adults, especially those who are trying to overcome addictions. What we have found out that as much as the physical aspect is important, the connectivity is equally important, and football for us does that. When, especially in our case, kids get addicted to tobacco or sniffing glue at a very early age. We work with children on the street, and one of the most common problems that we have seen is children are addicted to smelling glue. And it's really tough during the early ages to pull them away from that. Sometimes the kids are there because they want to subdue their hunger, forget about their poverty, or it's just a good time pass. So it's very difficult, even when we start giving them nutrition, it's difficult to pull them away from those habits. But sports, once they come on the field and we create this sort of fun competition, they realize that their bodies are not supporting them. And they are amazingly aware about how it all changes for them. So yes, I would say that sports initiates that interest in developing yourself. Once you see that others of your same age are doing better than you, suddenly you feel that urge to work on yourself. And that leads to taking more care of yourself. Whereas competitive sports can be a good arena for anyone to aim at, equating sports to, let's say, like, I cannot just blanketly say that everyone who plays sports becomes a leader, becomes a communicator, becomes a team player. No, there are still many gaps that sport leaves. And then it becomes the role of coaches, facilitators, to actually fill in that gap. Because as much as the sports is important, I think the role of community leaders and sports who bring those kids together and spend time with them, that is again a very important thing. For an organization like ours, which has worked across India, we feel that you can bring people from across the country. And if you leave them alone on a play field, you don't need to introduce anyone to anyone. They just start playing. And that is actually how we began also. For past 18 years, we've also selected teams from across the country. This year, we conducted our national championship on the beach of Goa, which was again attended by Rohit and a wonderful team from VENDA. And they were able to firsthand see how sports breaks barriers.
True.
You can feel shy initially, but once you start playing, everything all your reservations are gone. And that becomes like, for us, everything happens on the field. If we want to talk to you about any issue, we will have a ball in our hands. We will be passing and we'll be talking. And football becomes that language, a common language through which you can communicate about anything and everything. And it helps you overcome a lot of issues. I said shyness, but it can help you build up your confidence. It can also help you become a better team member, a leader. Everything can happen on the field. We have been selecting and sending teams for Homeless World Cup, as I said earlier. And last year we had, last year only we had Major from VENDA who accompanied us to Cardiff, and he was the goalkeeper. And we were able to secure, I think, higher rank than the year before. And we managed to win the Dragon Trophy, one of the trophies in the World Cup. It was amazing to see how shortly Major overcame his initial inhibitions, and he was one of the most likable guys on the team. And mind you, this team had players from all across India. We had players from Gujarat, from Northeast, from Haryana, from Punjab, and it was just like a small India in a bowl. But it went so well. So I can assure you that no matter what situation you are going through, it is always a good idea to invest some time in yourself, because sports also let you, especially when you're grown up, it helps you not to take yourself seriously, especially when you can't kick a ball properly and you realize that, I'm faulty. It gives you that sense of laughing at yourself that, my God, I have left this game and how badly I'm doing. So, yeah, sports does that.
Thank you, Vijay. Definitely, sports does that. But as you clearly pointed out, one of the conflict with this idea will be that, especially in a state like Kerala, when there is a lot of football passion, the game always becomes about winning and losing, as you mentioned. So the question to the Shruti is that when it becomes game just about winning and losing, and when the kids who doesn't have any top-notch football skills, or when they don't have enough talent to play, or even not just with football but with music and everything, when they don't have enough talent, they miss out on a lot of things. They don't get to play as much as a normal kid who has a lot of talent. So the question will be, do we need to be inclusive? Do we have to be not just looking at the rewards or exemplary rewards which it's going to give us, but just be inclusive of all the kids, even without any talent?
That's an interesting point. And, before I start, Abhijit, I think, clearly spoke about all the great things that, happen when people just come together, to actually, when you physically exhaust yourself. I love that line, Abhijit. So anyway, I'm going to, use that. But to answer your question, Rohit, there will always be, when you start off, people who'll have no talent, and then that's where, like Stephen was saying, right, then it's practice. You have to come back, you have to keep practicing. I mean, so that again depends on how serious you're going to be about the sport. I think over a period of time, children or adults at any age trying to come in to learn a sport, you come in initially, and then I think in a few classes you figure out if you're good, not good, whether back, or sort of then moving on to something else. But I think to look at it, should we be inclusive? Absolutely. I think every playground, every field, I mean, then it is about the coaches or facilitators. How are you going to sort of make different batches, but still ensure that people don't lose that interest, people don't lose that excitement, people keep coming back, because there is so much to gain from it. So I think it about being inclusive is, and it's also about teaching players who are really good, right? That a team is made up of all types of people. Now, whether it's in the corporate world or in the world outside or on the sports field, You will always have all types of people who make a team. You're going to have your superstars who play extremely well, know great positions, are going to be very talented, but you also need people who are going to be your average guys who need to be part of a team, because there are roles that different people are going to play. But of course, when a best team is picked, a best team is picked. But that's where I think you can teach kids so many things around resilience, around practice, around can-do attitude. So I think it's two things that, to answer your question. Definitely, we need to make it inclusive. I mean, otherwise you're letting kids lose out, and then it's back to the same circle of, I was not good, then what am I going to do? I think I'll just go and do something else. So no, I think it takes everybody. The great kids who play well, they need to learn that they have to be inclusive. The facilitators, the teachers, the people like you who are bringing all these people together. So I think it takes the whole community, the whole ecosystem to make this inclusive. Yeah.
True. Thank you, Shruti. That's a very clear perspective. Like the phrase says, 1,000 hours of anything will make you a master. So it's important we have to make sure that they spend those 1,000 hours in whatever we do. And so next person in our panel is someone have been advocating this inclusiveness and participation, right for participation for years. Regina Madison is the Secretary General of World Federation Against Drugs. She is joining us from Sweden. The World Federation Against Drugs is an entity which coordinates the work of around 250 member organizations around the world, and they advocate a lot on international stages on drug policy. And she is the chair in the Gothenburg local unit of UN Women, and she also is the deputy board member of UN Women Sweden. So Regina, can you share with us stories from your experience on how this alternative pursuit or focusing on other skills being used as a tool in different settings? Are these stories similar across the globe?
Thank you, Rohit, and thank you, Fourth Wave Foundation and Project VENDA for having me at this panel today with these fantastic panel members. I'm honored, and it's a pleasure to be here, and it's always a pleasure to be part of your events and conferences because you do them so well. And I'd just like to start by saying that Project VENDA is one such great example of how alternative pursuits can lead to safe environments. So I'd actually thought that I would speak in a more theoretical term today, including the international standards and the best practices regarding alternative pursuits. And I should add that it's an area which is somewhat under-researched, which also means that it's underfunded. But it has years and years of best practices and proven effective outcomes provided for us by civil society. So like you said, Rohit, we are a network of over 260 member organizations today. So I have a lot of good examples of organizations that are working with alternative pursuits. After today, I thought I'd send a list to the organizers so that everyone can take part in many good examples from across the globe. And until then, you can always visit our website to see most of our members there. So alternative pursuits among young people in creating substance abuse-free environments. It leads us to look at prevention measures. And according to the United Nations International Standards on Prevention, which are available online and accessible to everyone, what prevention should be is that it's effective, evidence-based methods which can significantly contribute to the positive engagement of youth and children. So such prevention strategies should work with families, schools, and communities, of course, to ensure that children and youth, and especially those among the most marginalized, like my colleague said before, speaking about inclusiveness is important here, so that all children and young people can grow and stay both healthy and safe into adulthood. So we do have two governing structures that both mention the issue of prevention in youth and sort of opt for action. And these are valuable tools for us when advocating for prevention strategies and for alternative pursuits. And these are the target 3.5 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which pressures states to focus on prevention strategies and treatment, of course. We also have, like Diana introduced us to in the beginning, the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which is the only human rights convention that specifically addresses the issue of illicit drugs. And it says that all children and youth should be protected from the harms of illicit drugs. And this is specifically Article 33 that says that. And what the convention demands is a child-centered drug policy. And this means that protecting children from illicit drug use isn't an option for states, it's an obligation which they have signed. So it's important to keep in mind that most young people will never do drugs. And those who do are mostly or oftentimes affected by vulnerabilities beyond their control. That being said, in many countries, the lack of early detection strategies and prevention initiatives, such as alternative pursuits, may cause developments towards addiction. So what is the best practices to this problem? Well, research shows that the best prevention strategies are those which address both risk and protective factors. And risk and protective factors include individual, environmental, social factors that sort of contribute to your added risk of developing substance abuse addiction, whilst also sort of render you more protected if these are positive protective factors. So when talking about prevention and especially alternative pursuits, it's not always about the substances. And I think Project VENDA is a good example of that. You can focus, instead of focusing on risks of certain substances or certain situations, the idea of creating safe environments means to focus on strengthening those protective factors in place around the young person. One such sort of international best practice, which Rohit introduced to us in his welcome remarks, is the Icelandic model. And it's a really interesting model because, like Rohit said before, they had one of the worst situations among the young people in Europe. And today they are, I think in 10 years, they halved substance use in alcohol, narcotics, and tobacco. And now, about 20 odd years later, they're under 5% of past month use, which is an incredible achievement. And what the Icelandic model did, which was so great, was that it focused on a holistic approach in strengthening protective factors. And they focused on 4 key aspects, including the home life, school life, communities, and after-school activities. And one of the 4 key aspects which proved to be one of the most effective is the incorporation of alternative pursuits in the form of after-school activities. So what the Icelandic authorities did was they recognized that investing in after-school activities and alternative pursuits is much more cost-effective than intervention measures during onset or ongoing addiction. And these after-school activities or alternative pursuits included sports, theater, art, music, that contributed to strengthening the protective factors, promoting self-esteem. It opted for inclusiveness, some enhanced life skills, and something that Abhijit said previously, which I think is very important in this, is connectiveness. It created a sense of community that that alternative pursuits can bring. So another thing that I believe it's important to mention is that when implementing the Icelandic model, the local ownership was important. They used successful coalitions when they combined key community members and specific professionals, and they developed local champions that could mobilize the community and influence action. And I believe that when working with youth, there's nothing that says that these champions and these local champions cannot be the young persons themselves. Young persons who can promote self-care, autonomy, and develop leadership among the youth. So finally, when implementing prevention measures and alternative pursuits, it's important to keep in mind to meet the person where they are, or the people where they are. And that includes a gender-sensitive approach, an age-appropriate approach, and contextual approaches. And when focusing on children and youth, involve them. That's why we're here today. It's important to involve young people in all decisions that are made to protect them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Regina. Abhijit, next question is to you. Earlier, we did discuss about how, as an individual, sports can help to grow. But my question is now, with more of a social context, how actually sports can be a tool in combating or using sports as a tool for prevention of drug abuse among children, like Regina mentioned in Icelandic model. How effective it will be to use sports for prevention?
Well, and I'm speaking purely from our experience of working with vulnerable youth, is that once someone starts to take part in, and by that I mean regular part in sports and physical activities, they naturally start to take care of themselves. One of the first things that a sport participating in a regular practice session teaches you is being on time. This starts to build. For very young children, when we want to build positive health habits, we start with, and nowadays it is going to be even more important, but we used to start with washing hands after you come and freshening up before you leave the field. These small types of increments of behavioral change can be built up, and we have built it up. There's also something called positive peer pressure. Again, being part of a group, you are also then forced to adapt certain practices that the group does. Now imagine someone who is part of a group, and usually you are more prone to be addicted to something when your friends and the circle that you hang around with is also abusing some substance. Now replace that with a group that is taking part in sports. They will of course impart whatever positive practices they take part into, and sometimes even negative practices. All I'm saying is that there is something that is also called locker room talk, which propagates negative behavior. But by and large, this physical act of coming out, playing together, discussing what went well, what went wrong after a good match, that is a bigger inroad into youth development than anything else. Sports gives a high, a natural high. I think Mr. Milton very essentially said that. I can't remember the exact words, but I realize that yes, sports also gives you, especially competitive sports, gives you a high. And if you are looking for a natural high in a culturally acceptable setting, sports is that. To address your second, earlier one of the points that came up was kids who are not really good at sports. Now that is where, as Shruti pointed out, comes the role of organization like ours, like VENDA, like Slum Soccer. This becomes our role to make sure that those who are not fitting into your normal competitions are given a chance to participate and to be playing at the best of their ability. Now, of course, they won't be playing at the highest level, but if you create an opportunity for all the people who don't make it to the top team to still play, that creates a positive flow. It absolutely stops the rhythm. If someone is addicted and suddenly becomes part of a group. Now, I'm not going to talk about the therapy or the other elements. I think there are experts who deal with that. But what we have seen, especially if it is an early group or especially if it's done in conjunction with other de-addiction measures, sports is very helpful. It's vastly helpful. So, in a sense, sports can and sports should be used as a collaborative or as a side-by-side of other measures as well. It can also definitely stop youth from experimentations because you hardly have. Imagine playing for 90 minutes. Whatever energy is left you, the first thought you go is, I want to get cleaned up and take some rest. And the act, like in ideal sessions where you also take time to review the session, where you're not allocating blame, but finding out how you played, that review among the team members with the coach, that essentially builds up that connection as well. Yes, sports can and should be used as a tool to address issues like addiction.
True, very true. But one of the challenges we as Project VENDA always face is like Regina said, to be always gender biased, non-gender biased in all this prevention things or alternative pursuit we do. But for us, it's a challenge, especially in like suburban areas or villages. The girls who play football or who are willing to play football is less, maybe because of the social stigma, social situations. Even we had a kid, the kid who wanted to play football, girl child, and because nobody else was willing to play with her, she always ended up playing with the boys. So the question to you and Shruti is how we can challenge this idea, or how we can improve on this phase.
Okay. When we began I think, although our program began in 2001, for first 5 years we worked entirely with boys. We did send a team to represent India at the Homeless World Cup back in 2007. It was a mixed team. It had both. It had, I think, 3 women in it. But even after coming back, we were not able to just run with the program. We realized that working with girls and women requires a separate set of expertise. And sometimes if you wait for the expertise to come, that itself is a failure. So what we did when we came back and we realized that, no, this is not going to sort of, when we set out, we thought that it will be easier to get girls to play, but it was not. It was very similar to your experience as well, that bringing girls out to play is not easy as it sounds. But you have to start with what we have. So we had 3 girls who had participated, and we asked them to come regularly. We also asked them to take part in other activities. What we as an organization did was we highlighted this story to the local media. We also went around in the schools where they were studying to make sure that they were felicitated and that their pictures were appearing. This led to a positive sort of attention towards them, and other girls started looking towards them. We then went on to train these girls only to become coaches. One of the first girls to come out as a coach was one of the first girls who took part in this Homeless World Cup. And she was able to convince, where we failed, the girl, her name was Shabana. Shabana was able to go inside her slum and get the first team. It actually was just 6 girls in the beginning, but by the year end, we had 12 girls. So we used this type of strategy to essentially get people motivated. Luckily for us, we had, I think that year we had 2 international football players come and visit one of our slums. And they went in and they spoke with the mothers. And of course, they didn't understand, the mothers don't understand English. But that was not the point. The act of these foreign players wearing shorts, coming into slums, have ball in your hand, all kit up, that changed the perception. And now we slowly also started getting parents on board. Second thing we did was we worked exclusively with local leaders to make sure that the girls are getting support, because as much as taking part in the sports is important, the physical act of traveling from one's home to the pitch, because there's also a lot of name calling that happens outside the field. You can create a very inclusive and very safe environment when the girls are on the pitch, But the moment they leave, they take the cycle and they are traveling backwards home, that is when some of the issues also come. So we had to make sure that someone was there, the local community was aware that the girls are coming, and then they were given that sort of safe traveling back and forth from home. Role models play a very important role. Sometimes, of course, boys can be role models for girls, but we feel that girls being role model for girls is much more impact, has much more impact than boys doing this. So we very regularly we bring in players, and mind you, it is not superstars who need to be there all the time, because no, we cannot access people who are like already at the top of their career. We get anyone who can, anyone who is able to convey the power of change that has occurred in their lives, and then use them often to speak to them and convince people to send their daughters. Now, we recently started working with 3 Urdu schools in our areas, which are exclusively girls' schools. And it has been 2 years, and now we have wait list of other 3 more girls' schools who want us to implement Shakti girls in their communities. So yes, once you pass that threshold, then it becomes easier. But the initial work, now that is definitely the challenging part.
And Shruti? Thank you, Vijay.
Yeah, so I think Abhijit has pretty much, covered the points. Role modeling is obviously one of the ways. Does not have to be a top role model. Something that I've seen, work when it came to getting more girls on the field, especially for a game like football. A game like football, I think, like Abhijit was saying, now this is not so much to do with whether it's even slum kids or people who have played sport, women who have played sport, people, I'm just going to take my example in a few, community that I play with. You think that it's not a sport that you can get into easily, or, just, it's a boys' sport is what you can't, sometimes think of it as. Something that I saw work over here is we would see a lot of mothers bring their little boys for the coaching classes. So what the coach did, on one of the days is that he just got the mothers to just kick the ball around, just do a little bit of drills and all that. What changed was the mothers then got so interested, and one wanted to, try out football and brought their daughters in. They brought their daughters also and put them into coaching classes. So somewhere I think if you were able to, and I know this is a completely different context, but if you were to bring their support system to do different activities, and in that activity get them to, sort of just play a tiny game, and then bring the girls in, not specifically and say that, your daughters are going to play football, but they're playing different sport, and then you're able to identify that they're actually good, with a physical sport, because they played, say, 2-3 games well. I don't know, how would you like to get them to start coaching? And I'm sure you may have tried some of these things, but the example I was trying to give is, even in urban cities and, where people want to bring only their boys for coaching, when they tried this slightly different angle of, just getting the mothers to play a little, the mothers then brought their daughters back, which they were not. Usually the daughters went for ballet, or they went for some, for tennis lessons, but suddenly putting them into a team sport was so different, because the mothers got onto the field and realized that, hey, if I could, do it, why can't my daughter? So, I mean, this is just, but I think all the other things around peers, getting you, if 2-3 of my friends try, then obviously she will go and convince a few more. But some of those are just the ways to go about it. And of course, reward and recognition, it coming in the media, stories, maybe even getting a match played by just women in your, in that place. Again, these are not professional women who play sport. If like a group of women who've, say, never been, playing this as a sport, or never played sport, but come together, in that young adult age and play this sport in your town or in your city, I think that again influences people to just try or not put so much spotlight on and done on an easy Saturday or Sunday. I mean, it has to be tried. Different ways have to be tried, Rohit. I mean,
Sure.
and I think even Regina was talking about that. When it's age and when it's gender involved, I mean, you just have to sort of think a little out of the box. Yeah.
True, very true. So next question to Regina is, we did discuss a lot of aspects of the alternative pursuits, but it comes to the core point. As UN says, it's right of each child to participate. So as a society, as a youth, how can we ensure that?
That's a really good question, and a hard one at that. I think it's up to each and every organization and adult to make sure that we include children's rights and the right to be heard. What's happening today is that a lot of decisions are being made without listening to children and young people, and that is why reintegration and recovery is difficult. It's why empowerment of children is sometimes hindered. In these cases where children aren't heard, they may not participate because they are in disagreement with what the adults are doing. And if that happens, then it would mean that these children are left behind. In the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which we spoke about earlier and that WFED works by, it is established, like you say, Rohit, that there is a right of the child to participate. It says that children and youth should participate, they should be heard and listened to, they have the right to receive relevant information, be included in decisions and policy, and it also states that policy and sort of all work or work in general should have a child-centric approach. So I think when working with including children and young people, we can work through educational programs and alternative activities where young people can be equipped to make informed decisions, whilst also offering efforts which are made at addressing the environments in which the young person lives in terms of these safe environments and the protective factors. And developing leadership among young people and supporting the inclusion and right of children and youth to be heard must come from all areas. So be it civil society organizations, sports, arts, but also businesses and political arenas. And for this, what the WFAD believes and what is a good tool is using the Convention of the Rights of the Child as a basis for this. 196 countries have signed it. So we can advocate for young persons to be an integral part of decision making and be providing the opportunity to express their rights. And as these 196 countries have signed it, we can hold these countries accountable to make sure that the right of the child is carried out. And for this reason, just hearing people with experience and hearing young people, I am very much looking forward to the question and answers section to hear more about the participants here and your views and recommendations.
Very true. We have to start asking our governments about the question, what's happening with rights of child around us. So before our last question, I just want to inform the participants audience, if you have question, you can start sending it right now. So after this question, we will move on to the Q&A session. You can send it over in our chat box with the Zoom. Okay, so the last question is to all the panels and the people around us. So as a youth, as a person who living in Kerala, what can I do? Not maybe as organized, maybe in an unorganized manner. As a youth, what can I do to facilitate kids with this alternative pursuits or give them options or to be with them? What can I do? The practical suggestions. Abhijit? You are still on mute, Abhijit. 1 minute.
So first, you have to yourself start participating in sports. It's one thing to go on and coach, but you have to start playing first. Secondly, wherever you can, and you don't have to be an excellent trained player. Sports is a means of engagement. Doesn't really mean that you're providing a high quality environment or high quality equipment. All it matters, and one of the way we use volunteers, especially older volunteers, is just by standing on the uh, boundary and shouting out encouragement to players, the worst players. That is one of the easiest way we have used volunteers who are older and who can't do anything. But for younger volunteers, the act of just taking some equipment, giving it away, and watching kids play, now that itself also gives satisfaction. If you are skilled, if you can, then you can definitely go ahead and engage them directly. Secondly is, and especially if you're trying to encourage girls to come out and play, you should bring your friends who are women or girls and ask them to be with you when you invite other girls to come out and play. Because uh, it's easier for them to see someone from their own sex and then start to play rather than boy teaching. This works very nicely. Sometimes all you need to do is just give away your used shoes to kids who would like to play, use equipment. I mean, there are multiple ways in which you can promote sports in youth, and all of them are really simple. Play yourself, bring others to play with you, go to places where you know that there are kids who are not participating in sport and just start playing with them. The easiest way. Of course, if you have connection with organizations that are able to help you, then you can always be a facilitator and bring the coaches and kids together and then help them have a good activity session. And again, I don't mean that everything has to be really costly or really well planned. Sometimes all the children need is an attentive adult who is genuinely interested in them.
True, very true. Shruti?
Speak up, Shruti. We can hear you. Oh, no. No, we can't hear. We can't hear.
Yeah.
Ah.
Now you can, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Now
yes.
the host unmuted me. Thank you. Okay. So Rohit, I think Abhijit has really actually covered most of the things. I would just add just one more element with that, where he said, bring your friends, bring, people. I mean, of course, that's from a women perspective. I would say, how do you just bring, your family to, and again, it's not just sport, any alternative pursuit that you are, encouraging yourself to go learn, tell yourself that one, you will volunteer in that space in a very limited way. Tell yourself that you will bring one more person to learn something with you. So just keeping like really tiny goals for yourself and for you to bring one more person just increases that chain. Otherwise, all other things I think that Abhijit just spoke about are really some of the things that one should really go out to do. But for yourself, keep like really tiny, that I will learn something. I don't have to be the very best at it, but I will practice regularly, I will go regularly, and I will bring one more person to join me. I think that's really what I would tell the youth.
Yeah, that's very true. Something like pass it forward. Like if you bring one person, then it will go on forever. And Regina, any take on it?
Yes, I really like that pass it forward. And I cannot but agree to the previous speakers. And just about getting involved. And like Shruti says, you don't have to be the best. It's about being inclusive. Maybe find an organization, talk with your peers. If there's a lack of an activity that you want to carry out, maybe you can get together with some friends or neighbors or schoolmates and see if you can make it happen among yourselves. So it doesn't always have to be like Abhijit said before, very costly. You just need to be a few people, and you can find those people around you as well.
With this, we are finishing our panel. And I would like to end it with one story, one success story of Project VENDA. We also, not just sports and things, we also do with vocational training and stuff. So one of the success story, one of the things which influenced me a lot was one of the kid who came for the training. He did attend the training and he attended an interview. That's all. There was no reply from the organization. He went back. He went back to his mason job. He was laying tiles, normal life. And suddenly they called him back for the training to go to Bangalore to do the training. And actually, the next day he had to travel, but he didn't have money. So he's supposed to travel on Thursday morning. So he had to go back to his construction site, collect the money for which he worked till Wednesday, and then travel for the training on Thursday. And he actually ended up missing the train because he went to collect the money. But the story changes when he joined the that particular company, and within 1 week he became the top performer of the district in that company. And that organization is like, which has around 3,200 chains or something around all over India. So, but I always personally think, what did I do? I actually didn't do many things for him. We didn't go talk to him. We didn't convert him, or we didn't do a lot of magic. Just he got an opportunity and he did what he can do. And he ended up being one of the best. So we always believe this opportunity is one of the key things which missing in for most of them, for most of these marginalized kids. So giving them a single opportunity will be good enough for a big change. With that, I end, and I call Happy Mon Babu. He has some question to ask.
Hello.
Yes.
My question is to Regina ma'am. The question is, we all have seen that many children who fall victims to this habit, even though if they quit the habit, their mental state is being destroyed. So what are the ways that can start from the household itself to deviate them or to bring back them to life? The initial base methods that can be started from household, every homes.
Sorry, I will just say what I believe you said, and then maybe you can correct me if I was mistaking. My sound wasn't that great. I believe you asked about children who have been in unsafe environments and the way out of that, and how you can lead a safe life again. Is that
yes? Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, we have a lot of good examples within our organization or our network where in terms of treatment and recovery after a person has an onset addiction or a full-blown addiction, is to support in that treatment and recovery process. And in terms of young people, that is looking at the holistic approach. It's about working with psychosocial support, maybe through support groups, developing positive coping mechanisms, or positive masculinity, if that's one of the issues that you've been faced with. It's about involving the family in the recovery work, and having patience. We have a lot of good examples of this, which I will include in that list later on. But it's a holistic approach and a lot of psychosocial support, and then supporting the child or the young person throughout the whole process. So not just leaving after that psychosocial support, but supporting in vocational training like Project VENDA does as well, and income generating activities to create a sustainability in that recovery process. and just support, connectivity is important as well. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dashin. I'm just stepping in for Rohit with the Q&As. We have another question from Sana Nazir. The question is about the context of India. How do all of these help in dealing with suicides, especially when we have things like pandemic, why you're home stuck? How do these things help when it's in the context of India? There is open question to any of the panelists. Abhijit.
ಶ್ರುತಿ ನಾನು ಎಷ್ಟು ಸತಿ ಬಂತು ಗೊತ್ತಾ ನೀವು ಹೊಟ್ಟೋದ್ರಿ ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಒಂದ
Mr. Abhijit, do you want to take that?
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, so I missed a bit of your question. Are you talking about today the different things we're seeing with the pandemic? How are we, how does having an alternate pursuit ensure that people don't slip into mental health issues? Is that what? Yeah, okay, fine. So two things here, Darshan. One, I would say, see, when you have an alternate pursuit, and I think all of us spoke about it, you are using your creativity, your learning to also be involved in something other than your day-to-day regular chores or work or studies or whatever it is each one of us are doing, irrespective of age, irrespective of gender. So I think your mind is a little busy. So every time you're feeling a little low, you are not in a frame of mind, at least you have this passion. And that's why they say have hobbies, have interests, have passions, because you can get your mind off probably what you're doing. So I think to some extent you probably have a little bit of more I don't want to say self-control, because these are chemical imbalances sometimes that happens, but at least you have a routine in your life, and you go back to that every time you think you want to feel better. I mean, that's what really passions and interests and these kind of things do. In this pandemic time, I think overall everybody is not sure about how much longer, what is yet to come. And I think that is a common state all of us are in. So if we can all, I think, stay in the present moment, just focus on, so I finished this now, what is the next thing I'm going to go to? I think it's about just making it small tasks to go after, small things, trying to be present and just, pursuing your passion. Or this alternative pursuit that you're in. And you make a lot of friends because you have these different communities that you're a part of. So if you're feeling low, you must, try and maybe just call a friend, talk to a family member, and I would just say stay present, do something at that time. But again, I don't think, I'm qualified to really speak about if somebody seriously needs help, but in a simple way, in terms of how we could all enjoy what we do other than our regular routine work, that is how alternative pursuits actually help, if I've answered your question.
Thank you. Our next question is from Sharon Vincent, and again it's an open question. I think even someone from the Project VENDA team can take it. So teens and adults who are addicted to alcohol and substance are already going through a tricky phase in their life. And when we get them involved in alternative pursuits, and if they are treated as an addict, as an alcohol, would that make the situation worse, or will that completely make the child disinterested when we bring these kind of children into the alternative pursuits program? I think anyone from the panel can take it up.
It's a tricky question, and I would love to hear someone from Project VENDA answer as well. But when somebody is already facing addiction or troubles in that, alternative pursuits are of course important, but it may also be important to have some additional approaches as well, such as psychosocial support or certain programs that are focused particularly on that addiction itself. But that doesn't say that alternative pursuits would be bad for the recovery of the person. It most probably will do good because it gives the sense of community and connectivity that is very important, and the peer support that is important in the recovery process. But I would love to hear from Project VENDA. I'm sure you have a good experience of this.
Yeah, I'll fit in and give a little bit of, can you all hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very relevant question because when we started off, we found these things to be hindrances when we started working with children who are already having, onset of addiction or are seriously into an addiction process. So just to specifically answer the question, yes, it is a lot of work to engage children who already sort of have, begun a process into being addicted, because the peer problem is not the problem at all. It's not the peers coming forward and treating them differently or making fun of them. That is not our biggest issues. I think children on the field are surprisingly, cheerful and accommodative and inclusive as well. I don't see that as one of those. But the challenge was with the adults who were working with the children, who would come in with a perspective that that child needed an extra support or needed more care, or that was what made them stand apart and feel not included in the team. So there was a sort of an unlearning process that we had to do with the entire coaching team, not the real coaches, but the general care team, that they were not to be looked at as any differently or treated differently on the field. They need to be looked at as peers who could compete, who could go out and play a good game, and who could go out and be angry or violent or do what it takes to be active on the field. So I think the process was in the unlearning of the adults who were taught to now look at a child with more need for care or support and things like that, while the the children themselves were extra supportive and accommodating, and they didn't see a difference if the child was using or not. That was the fun part of the learning that we had at VENDA. And our challenge right now is also to keep or sustain that goodness, and while we go now with the brand image of VENDA, sometimes we have children who all come to play now are being called as children who are going into care and rehab or processes with us. So now we are fighting or working in the community to sort of be an inclusive brand, which is how it was always. But just because the process involved bringing children out of this, where the general outlook also took a shape. But I think we've managed to be one of these great names to associate with, and all children are associating. And even when we go into school for counseling, we were very clear with the teachers not to send in children who only needed help. Send the performers, send the one who so that it's a mixed bunch and nobody felt ostracized or alone in the process. So we've devised our own innovative ways. I think it's just the fact of being in very sensitive and inclusive when it comes to the life of a child, and we've sort of done it very rightly in the process. So we not that we had the learning or a best practice to emulate from. I think it just was very organically instilled in our process. I hope I answered that question, but that's very beautiful to VENDA. That's very specific to VENDA's work.
Thank you, Dana. And we really are running short of time. So I'll ask one more question and we'll hand it over to MC to close the session. And if the panelists have time after that, we have a few more questions waiting in the chat box. So if the panelists have time after that, we could probably take that up after the conclusion. So I think this question is to Mr. Abhijit. And when it comes to the context of schools, how important or how crucial it is for the schools to shift their focus from academics and be a holistic place which promotes even sports and alternative pursuits, so that school doesn't become a place only for students who study, but a place for every child who might be interested in different things. Yes.
So some good developments that have happened recently and some positive steps that still need to be taken. I'll speak a little bit about both. So with the introduction of midday meal, now essentially what has happened is children get to fill their tummy, something which was not happening earlier. Also, another fact, and I don't know if it's correct for your state, but that children from class 1 to class 9 are usually promoted without being held back, which means that as a system, we are now also making sure that education is not your top priority. However, the mindset of most of the parents and also teachers still remains that no, you have to study all the time, you have to make sure that you're passing. This sort of creates a competition in minds of youngsters, especially when you're growing up and you do everything that you're asked to make sure that your parents, your teachers are pleased with you, even if you're bad at it. That remains a lot. So if I were to promote holistic development, I would begin with this, changing this mindset of parents or teachers trying to tell them that no, you have to be excellent, or even if you're not excellent, you have to work extremely hard to make sure that you're passing, because it's no longer a requirement. You can still have basic skills and go all the way up to 9. Of course, I'm not demoting education by any way, otherwise students will feel no, will fail and just will keep playing. So that's not also what I'm promoting. But the fact remains that now it's quite a level play field where children can go out and play. What we have seen in practice is that for primary schools especially, there are no dedicated physical education teachers. So the class teacher herself or himself has to also be there during the PE period. What ends up happening, especially in areas where there is no direct government control, is that the teachers, they just allow children to go out and play on their own. Or in the worst circumstances, they will make them do like cleaning of school or doing some personal errands, which is not at all helpful for the child. During growing up, I think there's a very specific amount of physical activity that a child has to undergo in order to develop completely. So that can be done even in school hours. So that is one thing. In higher schools, I think also, as I said, like the grassroots movement of conducting sports for the sake of participants has to gather more steam. Because the more you play, the better you get. But even if you're not at the highest level of competition, you get a chance to play, you feel part of something. From parents to teachers, we have to tell them this, that development of an individual happens as much on the field as much as it happens in the classroom. So we are doing it, we are pushing it everywhere. I think again, at a wherever you are existing, that is where you have to keep pushing this agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Abhijit. Over to the MCs.
Yes, what a discussion, isn't it? It was, sorry, oops. Oops. Sorry for the technical glitches that we are facing, but yeah. Anyway, so it was an enlightening discussion indeed, and once again, I thank the distinguished speakers on behalf of Project VENDA and Footway Foundation. I'm sure that we have got takeaways from all the panelists, like how Ms. Shruti talked about the importance of helping the youth finding things that interest them so that they are productive, and Mr. Stephen spoke about having faith and finding your call. and also the discipline that is involved in practicing talent. And also Mr. Abhijit mentioned about discipline too, and how sports can be a medium for physical activity and how it connects our mind and body's well-being. Thank you so much. And also Regina Matson, ma'am, boiling it all down to making the UNCRC the guidebook, and also the importance of protecting the kids from drug abuse and all other substance abuses through alternative pursuits. Yes, so I hope it was a very informative session, and especially I would like to thank Mr. Rohit Challat for seamlessly and effortlessly taking this discussion forward and seeing that we achieved our aim, that to know the role of alternative pursuits in a child's life. So, with that, our discussion comes to a conclusion, and thank you, speakers, for answering all the questions. And before we conclude the session, we have some reminders for the participants. Tomorrow, the third and the last day of S.A.F.E Forum 2020 is going to be a very important day because Team Youth will be the heroes of the day. Shortlisted social initiative ideas of teams from across Kerala will be presented to create S.A.F.E before an eminent panel consisting of Mr. C. Balagopal, Independent Director, Federal Bank. He is also the former IAS officer. Mr. Tina George, Associate Vice President of Muthoot Capital Services. Mr. Joe Ikarath, Fashion Designer, Co-Creator, Movability. Mr. Swaroop BR, Co-Founder of Star Communication and Advisor to the Board of Project VENDA. Well, so tomorrow the forum will start sharp by 10:30 a.m. So kindly log in at least 10 minutes prior to the scheduled time. See that you turn off the microphone, and you can use the chat box to ask questions during the Q&A session. You can prefer spotlight mode or side-by-side mode, or for the better visibility. Now, the same will be announced by my co-host, Mr. Tonish, in Malayalam also. So indeed, it was a really great session today, and over to you, Tonish. Thank you.
S.A.F.E ഫോറം 2020 ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഡേ ആണ് നാളെ. കേരളത്തിന്റെ പല ഭാഗങ്ങളിൽ നിന്നും തിരഞ്ഞെടുക്കപ്പെട്ട ടീം ഓഫ് യൂത്ത് അവരുടെ ആശയങ്ങൾ പ്രശസ്തരായ ആളുകൾ ഉൾപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരു പാനലിന് മുമ്പിൽ പ്രസന്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നു. നാളെ രാവിലെ 10:30 തന്നെ സെഷൻസ് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യും. ഇന്നത്തെ പോലെ തന്നെ എല്ലാവരും 10 മിനിറ്റ് മുമ്പ് തന്നെ ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് പ്രത്യേകം ശ്രമിക്കുക. ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്യാൻ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുള്ളവർക്ക് യൂട്യൂബിലും ലൈവായിട്ട് ഈ വെബിനാർ കാണാവുന്നതാണ്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫ്രണ്ട്സിനൊക്കെ ഈ ഒരു യൂട്യൂബ് ലിങ്ക് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാവുന്നതാണ്. ഈ വെബിനാറിലൂടെ നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലാക്കാം ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റീവ് പർസ്യൂട്ട്സ് പ്രൊമോട്ട് ചെയ്യുക വഴി എങ്ങനെ ലഹരിരഹിത സമൂഹം വാർത്തെടുക്കാമെന്ന കാര്യത്തെ പറ്റി. അതിൽ സ്പോർട്സിന്റെയും മ്യൂസിക്കിന്റെയും ആർട്സിന്റെ ഒക്കെ ഒരു പ്രാധാന്യം എത്രത്തോളമാണ് എന്നുള്ളത് നമുക്ക് വളരെ വ്യക്തമായിട്ട് മനസ്സിലായി എന്ന് ഞാൻ വിചാരിക്കുന്നു. സോ ഒരുപക്ഷെ നമ്മുടെ നാട്ടിലാകാം, നമ്മുടെ കോളേജിലാകാം, നമ്മുടെ ചുറ്റുപാടുകളിലെങ്കിലും നമുക്ക് ഹെൽത്തി ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റീവ് പർസ്യൂട്ട്സ് പ്രൊമോട്ട് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് തുടങ്ങാം. അങ്ങനെ ലെറ്റ്സ് സേ നോ ടു ഡ്രഗ്സ് ആൻഡ് യെസ് ടു ലൈഫ്. താങ്ക് യു സോ മച്ച് ഫോർ ജോയിനിങ് വിത്ത് അസ്. ഇനി നമ്മൾ Q&A സെഷൻ കണ്ടിന്യൂ ചെയ്യാണ്. താല്പര്യമുള്ളവർക്ക് മാത്രം റിമെയിൻ ചെയ്യുക, ബാക്കിയുള്ളവർക്ക് ലോഗ് ഔട്ട് ചെയ്യാവുന്നതാണ്.
Thanks a lot, Tonish. I hope that the panelists could stay back for some more time because we have a few questions left. I'll just quickly go through them. And I think the first question is from a practitioner, and it's again an open question. What about the young adults growing in the broken family? How can we give support to them? There are many young adults we see daily in our OPD routines. And one common thing which we see in most of them is that they are from broken families and they don't really get the support. So what do we do there?
You want me to take it, or Abhijit, you want to take that before I give our solutions? Unmute yourself, please. Abhijit, unmute girl.
I was saying that this is one of the areas we have not much experience. So I would invite others to speak about.
Yeah, so this is a good mix of issues that we have been handling, and we do not expect children in the communities that we work from to come from really perfect backgrounds and then pursue art and theater and music and be good at studies. So we know that the issue with the kids coming from broken families are multifold. Starting from self-doubt to denial to being abused to being neglected, all of this couples into layers of problems that they need to battle themselves and then come out and be able to perform or include themselves into a social system. So how do we manage it? I think one of our clear processes to enable them being effective or being participant in any group activity is to let the peers lead, not by disclosing all of the sides of the story of the child, but we encourage a fair playing or a level playing ground for all children, so they all of them are able to come out despite their difficulties and showcase whatever they have. Second is alternative pursuits is one of those big areas which enables a child forget the problems and participate. So especially games or the field games or physical activity, being able to exhaust physically is then becomes an alternative way for them to sort of engage and forget about the other problems they usually worried about. So we see it as a very effective tool for the child to be able to cope with the otherwise bigger problems of the family and neglect and abuse and all of that. Thirdly, we also see that children, when guided or have another mentor away from the system that was supportive to them, which has failed them, that is the family or the parent has failed them, and find another support or a mentor outside that system, usually in a playground or a field or during sports, they realize that they are not let down. That life has more to give. There are more people who trust them. There are more people who sort of bank on their abilities. So a couple of these measures that we've seen to work with a child who comes from a broken home or is being neglected in a family sort of help. And I don't think these are very therapeutic or very scientifically designed. These are very organically coming forward. And I think these are the things that actually enable inclusion of children with various kinds of problems. So to answer you specifically, peers play a great role. To the game itself enables the child to be able to forget the difficulties and be engaged in that time frame and play well and forget the problems. Thirdly is a mentor or a supporter outside of the system that he was looking for, or that the system that failed him, that is the family. Another mentor or somebody who trusts in the ability of the child. All of this sort of gets the child to a space that is healthy to participate. I hope I answered that question if the person is online.
And I think the next question is somewhat similar. It's from M. Sharmila. The question is, there is a trend in today's youth where they don't want others to interfere with their personal life or personal issues. In that context, when there are habits which take them to the extreme ends where the youth get lost or they lose themselves, how can we help in saving them?
Do I take that again? I think it's more specific to the addiction and our work. As much as young adults, youth, teenagers think that addictions and narcotics and substances or unhealthy behavior is a very private thing to do, we have to make them realize that it is something that they might do in their privacy or in the group that is very closed, but the effects of that is visible to their immediate family, their neighborhood or their peers, and also has a social impact in terms of if a young adult is addicted or high on alcohol and drives, he is a social nuisance. So as much as youngsters talk about this being a very private affair, this is my privacy, this is what I do in my private, they need to understand that substances or being under the influence has its immediate impact on their peers and family. That's the immediate surroundings, and also extended surroundings of a social system that they exist in or a community they live in. So it's no more a private affair. And if the person is planning to engage in the public or be in a social or community space, he is definitely going to be a threat to his life and the lives of the others in the space. So that is a misinformation that is there, and it's one of those argument points for youngsters to stay in addiction or pursue addiction. So that's something that we as people who in this space or doctors, people who work to tell them, make the sort of that mindset. That was the first part of the question, is how do you enable them to come out of it? Was that so, Darshan?
Yes. How do
What
we
was
help
the second
them?
part of the question?
The
Yeah.
first just-
So if you're a peer asking this question, a genuine friend who wants to help another friend, I think you're the best person to do it. We have seen friends being greatly instrumental in enabling people to come out into the open and seek support. So peers are the biggest influencers either to get into it or even come out of it. So we encourage you to do that. Two, if they're not in a mindset, because there are different stages of addiction, and the more you advance, the more you are into the process of addiction, the lesser you want to come out or see the value in the return journey. In that process, you need to really go into a space where you bring in medical practitioners, people who are working in this space, get technical advice on how to actually get them out of it. It's a hard process, but you need to get professional support to do that. That's the best advice we can give now. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is to Regina. So Ms. Regina, the question is, what do governments do to break the social barriers and promote inclusive participation for children also?
That's a good question. Not enough is the simple answer to that, I reckon. We are seeing a bit of a shift now in certain countries that are actually making the Convention of the Rights of the Child into law. Sweden, for example, where I am, we have made the convention law this year, 2020, and the government is busy working away at how to make sure that all areas of the government's work and services are child-centered. But it's a long way to go. And like I said, the simple answer is not enough. And it's up to civil society and local and national authorities to, like we spoke about earlier, hold governments accountable. As of now, civil society is in the forefront of this work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think
before you move, I think Swaroop wants to say something. Swaroop is also on the board of Project VENDA. Swaroop.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say that I think it is important that all of us as parents, as teachers, push our educational institutions to get to include, how to take care of the body, and how to teach them what core strength is all about. For instance, we've been talking about sport. So what is core strength and what is nutrition? Because we are in the situation we are in today because even for MBBS doctors in India, nutrition is an optional paper, believe it or not. So, which is why they keep telling you, you can eat whatever you want so long as you continue to take the medicines that we prescribe for you, which is a whole lot of hogwash, if you ask me. So I think it is important to nurture this culture of being active, of moving. Children learn everything through movement. So I think it is important to get that into, mainstream that into schools and colleges, especially primary school, so that it becomes a part of the understanding of a child, that this is my body, this is how it works, this is how I need to keep it healthy, this is how I need to feed myself, this is what I should eat, this is what I should not eat, or at least know that when you're not eating something that you're not supposed to, you know the risk involved there. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swarup. So I think we are moving to the last question. Both Abhijit and Shruti could probably answer this. So the question is, now that youngsters have a lot of other distractions, which might be other unhealthy pursuits, how do we, enable them to focus on healthier pursuits, like what we are speaking now?
Okay, Abhijit, I'll just going first. So I think the answer lies in what Swarup actually just said. If it's and it's very interesting the take he took. If from school, what's healthy, what's good, what you need to do, what you shouldn't do, then we don't reach that point, and then it becomes like we're preaching and teaching, and then and then of course Diana spoke about the peer influence. So somewhere we've got to sort of get in and and start doing this. But considering now that still has to happen, what can we do today, right? I think there's no going away from the fact that, like Steven said, everything is in our palm. The mobile phones are there. The distraction is there. I think so. The question is again comes back to what can the ecosystem do? What can the governments do? How do we create many different initiatives? Where recognition can be given to children who do things in a cool but in the right way. But they kind of become rock stars in the same way that they look at that rock star world in a very different way today. But how can you, in their, in the way they see it as what's cool? Because today, according to people, and when you're looking at the phones and all that, you think if you have to be cool, you need to do certain things, right? Cool people are not people who are just going about playing sport or just, unless you're like really winning the sport. So I think it's how are we going to create these mini and change the perspective of mini role models who are in an average day, an average person, what are the cool things this person is doing? So I think it's to do with brands, it's to do with companies, it's the entire ecosystem, I think. And I think it's slow, but of course one way is, like Swarup said, how do you push the government, how do you push the education board, but till then, I mean, the answer lies in wherever we can go influence, wherever you have a group of people that you can sort of tell them what's really cool today and what will be cool later on. I think we are the only ones who can sort of jump in, and all the students listening in, you decide today you're cool in this different way of what you understand is cool. Trust me, that first follower is just a few steps away. Somebody is going to join you, and that's going to become a group of people. So I'm a just big believer of, and I've seen that happen. So you just need to, like I said, just jump in, do something different. Somebody will follow you, trust me. So try it. Yeah, that's what I would think.
Thank you. Mr. Abhijit, would you like to add something to that?
I think Shruti quite properly covered the whole thing. I think a lot of time what is happening is youth are looking outside for affirmation of their identities. And which is why the whole culture sort of looks to, you getting affirmation from your friends, your families. Sports does that for you. If your only competition is yourself, you are every day building yourself up. I believe that as much as the role of social media and all these influencers is there in your life, the role of a coach in building your confidence up, and in today's situation particularly, I've seen that a coach is no longer just a coach. He's also an online troubleshooter for you. He's your counselor. is someone who is helping you connect you with the rest of the group. So I think more than or rather looking at others, yes, absolutely, because they are your peer group, but looking at yourself as, like Shruti said, becoming a role model yourself, that is going to be critical. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Abhijit. In fact, one of the participants was curious to know when will slum soccer expand to Kerala.
Sorry?
One of the participants was just, when will slum soccer expand to Kerala?
We are already there. We are with VENDA. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Abhijit. I think that's all the questions we had for today. Once again, thank you to all the panelists for making this interactive, for staying back after the allotted time. This is again another reminder to all the participants. Tomorrow we'll begin sharp at 10:30 a.m. and we have students are going to be the hero of the show. And we have quite a lineup of interesting ideas where these students think of their solutions or their social initiatives which can prevent all substance abuse among children. And we also have a very strong jury who's going to be contributing to those ideas and analyzing those ideas. So I welcome all of you to join us tomorrow sharp at 10:30 via Zoom. Thank you all for being a part of this event today. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
joining
Thank
in
you.
despite
So
the
much.
time difference and all that. Shruti, thank you
It's
so
good
much.
to get up early.
Thank you. Keep up the great
Thank you.
work.
Thank
VENDA
you,
team.
thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Shruti. Abhijit,
Yeah.
I just can't thank you enough for always standing by Project VENDA. Our boys have had great success working with you, and we are really indebted to you for the kind of success that the two boys had while going to Cardiff and playing and bringing back our Fair Play awards. So I just can't thank you enough. Shruti, we meet again, all of you.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
thank you
team.
so much.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you.
Thanks all the participants.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Swaroop and Raja and all of you.
Team VENDA, if we can stay back for 5 minutes.